Hi, this is Dr. Gary Sprouse, the Less Stress Doc, and I'm here to help you get in your happy place and get rid of all that stresses in your life. Today we have a great guest named Jill Estell, and I'm here with my wife, Terry. Yay.
Drive on happiness highway.
So Jill is an RN who I work with up here in Maryland, and now she's down in South Carolina. And she has an amazing story to tell us about how she changed her life after reading Highway to Your Happy Place, a roadmap to less stress. So today we get to hear about her story. Jill, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Hey, Dr. Sprouse. Hey, Terry. How are you? We worked together, I calculated, and it was probably right around 2010. It's about 14 years ago. I stopped in North Carolina for about 7 years. And then finally, it was just about a year ago this week that we moved down here to South Carolina. I was working in ICU at a major health system in North Carolina. I'd been reading books for a long time. Your book hadn't been out yet. So every book had a little bit of good information. Like, oh, this is great. Oh, this is great. Oh, this is something I'll put into place. But yours was the only one that truly gave me a map, gave me steps to take, to follow, that I could truly implement in all of it. What did it all mean? And then how could I put it into action? I think I texted you. I was on the beach reading your book. And I said, oh my goodness, like your book is changing my life. Like I know how to move forward now. Gather the data and now I'm going to do something about it.
I did a seminar and you were one of the speakers in that seminar. And you told us this very heart-wrenching story. Would you mind repeating some of that?
Sure. I guess it's taken me most of my now 50 years to understand that my childhood was a little different. My parents always told me, everyone has something, Jill. Just deal with it. You'll be fine. So getting older and reading a lot and reading books like yours made me realize I am who I am because of what I went through. But also, did I need to continue that through the next phase of my life? My mother was an alcoholic. I don't know that I really realized that till I was much older, probably in high school and college. I just knew she liked to drink beer. I found a lot of my coping mechanisms were hypervigilance, always trying to be on point so that I could prevent the next thing from happening. So taking on way too big of responsibilities at way too young of an age. And your book helped me with that as well. And I don't know if we were together in a conversation or it is part of your book. I don't remember that part, but you said you were a kid. Like you were 7 years old. You should not be wrapping your own Christmas presents because your mother's passed out on Christmas Eve. That's unfair. You were a child. My father worked a lot and he was also an addict. It was just normal to me. So then when I went off into life to be my own person, of course I went to nursing school because I was going to go take care of everyone else. They're the only tools that I had. They were the things that I was proud of. That's what made me who I was. So I was going to go get a career. Next month, I'll celebrate my 30th year in nursing.
Wow.
Yeah, very exciting. I know now, after reading the book, I didn't understand the correlation between the two. But it put me into a really good place. It put me into a very good career. I've never been unemployed one day in my life. So I took those skills that I had in my childhood and used them for a career. Not until your book did I realize that all of them aren't serving me now. It's what happened to me. It's not who I am, so it's time to move forward.
That's an interesting point you just made. Say that again, because I think people need to hear that.
That it's not who I am, it's what happened.
Yeah, that's an important thing, because a lot of people, when they've had something bad happen, and in your case, didn't even realize it was bad happening, it's like they kind of take it on as their identity, and it's something that's happening to you, not you.
Right. It took me a long time in reading your book to get me to that point. Also, shocker, chose a husband who was also an addict, also someone who had behavioral issues, someone who was abusive. And until I got out of that, I didn't realize what I had gone through. Like now I can look back and I can say A, B, C, D, of course that's what it is. Through it and during it, it was normal. It's what happened at my house every day.
A lot of times when people talk about childhood traumas, they're reflecting on a single dramatic, traumatic incident. And what she's talking about, and something I can truly relate to, is a long, slow bleed of small little traumas that built up over time.
That's a very good explanation. Yeah, absolutely. Because there were good times. I can't say, my marriage was terrible. There were wonderful times. I can name 10 right now, I bet. There was an immediate sense of family. His family was normal as opposed to mine. He had a brother and he had a child that, of course, I swooped in and totally did not set boundaries and did not understand my role and went overboard with. So I continued that. Thankfully, that marriage ended, but not after many, many years of discourse. I'd lost a child in pregnancy because of the abuse. My mother came to live with me. She was ill at a younger age, and she passed away about a year later. But I said, how am I going to handle this? What am I going to do? And I said, I'm going to do the best I can with what I have. I'm going to accept my mother for who she is now and not all the things she did before. And I'm going to choose to have a good relationship. I'm going to choose not to allow her to bring out that shame in me and that guilt in me. And it's when I realized that I had the power to decide how I reacted, what I reacted to. Someone said, oftentimes their emotional maturity stops growing at the time they start drinking. Well, my mom started drinking heavily around the age of 16, and that was a light bulb for me. If I treated my mother like a 16-year-old, we had a great relationship.
I was trying to figure out what you meant by that. How do you treat somebody as a 16-year-old? I don't know.
Giving her narrow choices, not expecting her to take the lead, not expecting her to see the big picture, not expecting her to put my safety first, not expecting her to understand the amount of effort that something takes on my part. She's incapable of that. She was incapable of that. But she's my mother.
I mean, you bring up a point, right? So as difficult as your childhood was, your parents were probably wounded children themselves, right? I mean, they probably didn't grow up in the best of situations, and so they were trying to do the best they could. It just wasn't like that average parent, right? So one of the things that I find is that when we deal with people that are not being nice to us, we tend to demonize them and say, oh, they're just bad people. And a lot of times they're just wounded children themselves. By looking at them that way, it changes your perspective. And I think what you just did was, you're like, hey, I stopped expecting my mom to be what I considered a mom, and I just started treating her like a young adult, and then things went better. And it's like, yeah, I could see you doing that.
Yeah, and I think it was taking that Norman Rockwell thought of this is what a holiday is going to be, or this is what family really needs. No family's perfect. Every family has obstacles that they go through. And it was really taking reality and saying, you have the opportunity to have a relationship with your mother. Are you going to have that? Are you going to take that opportunity, or you're not? There's plenty of people that go no contact with their parent. And that's not something I wanted. My dad was a great dad. If you had a list, there'd be 100 things on the list that he did very well. He did very, very well.
So one of the other things that you said earlier was about choice. And it's one of the things that I write about in the book is that, choice is this amazing skill that humans have. But I don't think people understand how we got that power of having choice. I'm watching my dog, right? If she's hungry, she's eating everything in sight. But when she's not hungry, you can put all the stuff on their food that you want and she's not eating. Because she can only do what her brain is telling her to do. So humans have this unique ability that we can say, hey, you know what? I'm really super hungry, but I'm not gonna eat right now because I wanna lose weight, or I wanna wear the clothes that I just bought the other day, or whatever. But we have the ability to not do what our brain is telling us to do. And then we have the ability to add alternatives. So you can't really have choice if you don't have alternatives. And you can't really have choice if you can't not do what your brain is telling you to do. But when you put those two things together, then you get choice. And I think one of the things that you said to me a couple times now, when you realize, hey, you know what? I have choices in my life and I'm not stuck in this rut. That opened up a whole world to you, opened up a whole different set of variables that you could then buy into.
The title of my talk there at the event that you hosted was to give myself permission. And that's kind of the big takeaway that I had, was giving myself permission to say, I'm worthy, my low self-esteem, which is part of your book as well. That came from what I thought were my morals and my core values. But then when I gave myself permission to open that back up and say, no, Jill, what do you truly believe and what is important to you and what do you put value toward versus what have you been told your whole life. And I had to give myself permission to even allow myself to think of that and decide for myself as an individual what I wanted. Allay any guilt and shame, which you also talk about tremendously in the book, and that I think I read the guilt chapter 5 times. I'm not even Catholic and I read the guilt chapter quite a bit. I had to move past that and give myself permission to have boundaries and to identify what I truly wanted in life. I don't think I've ever asked myself that. I don't think I ever said, what do you want in life? Like, who are you? What do you stand for? And what do you want? Everything I had done was for other people and to help other people. But along that road, what did I want too?
Terry and I were just talking about this morning. It's like she's been so busy doing for others, and now she's retired, her kids are grown up. I mean, they need some guidance and some help, but in general, they're sort of on their own. And so she's now like in this position where she gets to choose what she wants to do, but she doesn't even know what she wants to do. And you were liking it to, a plant that's been dead and now you're trying to water it. And I'm like, no. This is more like a buried treasure that's just under a lot of ground and all the dirt. So you just have to keep digging till you get to that area. But right, does that make sense?
Yes, it is absolutely uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is one of the words that I would absolutely liken this to. And where you talked about your perspective prism, I truly had to change how I looked at situations. Was it the same? Was it different? How different was it going to be? Was I going to be 180 degrees different than what I thought and what my plans were? Because my plans weren't mine. They were someone else's. I was tagging along with them.
When you were telling me your story, what I heard was you were living in a house, and I guess you were in North Carolina, a bigger house. Somewhere along the line you said, you know what, I got choices. I'm going to take control of my life. That's what you said to me. I was not expecting those kind of results from the book that I wrote, but tell me what happened.
Well, you had said that you're only one decision away from a totally different life. You just have to be able to take that step and make those decisions. So I was working 40 to 60 hours a week in an ICU, taking care of people. I was running my then husband's business on the side. I was volunteering 30 to 40 hours a week at a nonprofit.
I'm like, wait, I'm like...
Were you sleeping at all?
No, not much. I had gone back to school twice and got 2 additional degrees, a business degree and an additional nursing degree. And I was just at rock bottom. None of it meant anything to me. I was just doing for other people. And then after reading your book, I said, I am one decision away from changing my life. So I had a 4,000 square foot house. I said, why am I doing this? Why do I have a 4,000 square foot house? My marriage had ended, again, thankfully. And I was like, what do I want? It's time for me to make decisions for myself. And I said, I want to move to the beach. I don't want to be 70 and move to the beach. I want to be 48 and move to the beach. I sold my 4,000 square foot house, sold probably 70% of my belongings, and moved here to North Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. I live mortgage free. I'm nearly debt free. And I'm living the life that I want to live with no judgments and no worries about what other people think. I spent so many years, coulda, woulda, shoulda. What will this person think? What will the neighbor think? What will people at work think? Who cares? My life is mine, and it's time for me to live my life.
Yeah, I like that. That's one of the things that I talk about is that, we were talking about choice and how humans have choice. But one of the things that choices allow us to do is to feel like we're in control. And it sounds like from what you're telling me, through your choices, you now feel like you're in control of what's going on. And I think that's really important because people really crave feeling in control of their life. And what they have to realize is their choices that allow them to feel that control. Before, when you said shoulda, coulda, and like you were saying the same thing, like I had to do this, I should have done that, blah, blah, blah. When you say those kinds of things, you are saying, I have no choice. And then when you say I have no choice, then what you're saying is, then I have no control. And so I think you were feeling that way when we were talking earlier. You just felt like you had no control, and you were saying the same thing. It's not a good feeling. And so when you start looking at life and you go, hey, I see it as a series of choices, that gives you that sense of control back. That's empowering just by itself. Here's the cool thing. It doesn't take any changes in your circumstance. it changes how your mindset looks at it. So when I got involved with the book Mindset Matters, that's one of the reasons I got involved, because you don't have to change your physical environment. You just have to change how you view your environment and see it as choices instead of being I have to's and I should have.
Right. You talked about the perspective prism and your map is adjustable. All those things really resonated with me. One other thing you said is the last piece of advice I have for you to reduce or eliminate your guilt is about forgiveness. I had another pretty big aha moment that forgiveness and grace was meant for me as well. I was giving it to everyone else, but I would never deem myself worthy of my own grace. Never given myself the benefit of the doubt. I never given myself an opportunity or an excuse for something. I held myself to the highest standards.
Well, this is one of the things that I found was that the hardest person to forgive is yourself. And the reason is because this is Desmond Tutu and his daughter. You can choose whether I'm going to renew the relationship or I'm going to just go a different way. But with yourself, you don't have that choice. You have to forgive yourself, or else you live with yourself in misery and guilt. But when you go through the process, then you go, oh, okay, now I get it. And so now forgiving yourself is a process that you can go through, but you have to be willing to go through it.
It was definitely hard. There was definite times, but the first step, like I said earlier, was giving myself permission to truly look at it as it was. I was a child when those things happened. I did not deserve, nor was it my role to put the house out when it was on fire. She had caught the side porch on fire when she was trying to cook. That was not for me. I shouldn't have had to deal with that. So I need to apologize to myself and accept the apologies that you never receive, and that's okay. But to give myself permission to move on, to give myself permission to let that go. Right now, if you ask me to describe myself like you did in the beginning of the show, I didn't even include those things because I've given myself permission to let them go. Given myself permission to take those rocks out of my backpack. That doesn't define me. I probably spent 3 months saying, I am not just the child of an alcoholic. I am not just someone from a small town in New Jersey. I am not just someone who is a survivor of abuse. And getting through that, I can now talk about it, just tearing up a little bit without crying my eyes out. And I can help other people. And that's kind of what I said. That's my power in this. I've helped multiple friends over the last year and a half-ish. I've helped other people that have been in similar stories. What makes my story a positive for me? Because now I can take what happened to me. It was not my fault. And now I can help you get through your situation. And I have a couple friends that are in much better situations right now because I was able to take that negative and make it a positive. Because again, it's my perspective prism.
So tell me what your day-to-day is like. We've heard about the past. Let's talk about the present.
We go to the beach almost every day. We have a golf cart. I like to drive the golf cart around. Everything is intentional and decided. I'm not saying I overplan things, but I definitely decide what I want to do and what's important for me. After this, I have a call. I just got accepted to a master's program.
Oh, wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm going to go for my master's in education. I teach at a local nursing school down here, which is probably the most fulfilling position I've ever had. I get to teach nurses. I go to the hospital or the clinical setting with them, and I get to show them what it means to be a nurse and show them how to apply what they learned in school to an actual human being and the weight that holds. That's important. I feel so lucky to be able to have this opportunity. And I think all of those things that happen to me in my life, they're not me. This is who I am. And this is what I chose to do with my time and the rest of my days.
Well, I wanted to thank you so much for coming by today and sharing your story with us and telling the viewers here that it doesn't have to be like that it doesn't have to be, I have to, I should, that you have choices, and that by recognizing your choices, using your perspective prism, you can then get some control back over your life, and it's freeing. It makes the burden kind of goes away. And so now you're doing things intentionally, as you said. You get more energy out of this and you feel better about yourself.
I would encourage people to use the word and. I had a difficult childhood, and that doesn't affect my future.
That sounds like a book title.
It might be. Go ahead. Let's do it, Doc. Let's do it. There's a power in a very small word named and.
Well, thanks, Jill, for coming with us. So I want to thank you, listeners and viewers, for coming by and coming to the Happiness Highway podcast. Again, we're here to help you get into your happy place, get rid of all the stresses that are in your life through some of the advice through the book. It's Highway to Your Happy Place, a roadmap to less stress. And the other book that I've been involved with is called Mindset Matters. Both of those are great books that will help you get to a place where you can be happier with your life. So check out my webpage. It's thelessstressdoc.com, or email me if you have a question or if you want to personalize this, because if you have a specific question about your situation, just email me at lessstressdoc@gmail.com. So thanks for listening. I want you to subscribe, talk to your friends, tell them to come by and listen too, because I think this is something that can help a lot of people. Thanks for coming by. Terry, thank you for being here. Jill, thanks for coming by. And I'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Drive on happy.